fellow at the University of St Andrews, and I am obsessed with sex. I love my job. So I've been researching differences in behaviour between men and women for the last 6 years or so. So some people would say that I'm obsessed with gender. For practical purposes, I prefer sex. It's shorter. Have we met? So I'm currently looking at differences between men and women in conformity, so the tendency to do what the majority of the people around you are doing. And conformity's got a bit of a bad rep, I think. You know, when we think of following the majority, we think of sheep, or lemmings, or in the early 90s, some very dubious pants. So we know that following the majority can make you look rather silly. But sometimes copying the majority really is the smart thing to do. You know, the person who doesn't have email and insists on using carrier pigeons instead is in the minority for a reason. And I hate to mention it, but the people who choose to do PhDs are in the minority for a reason. And if you ever find yourself at work one day thinking, where has everybody gone? Take a look out of the window towards the fire assembly point. This might solve the mystery. There you are! We sent you a carrier pigeon, but it must have been overcome by the gas. How are you feeling? So sometimes the majority knows something that you don't. And there's a trade-off between trusting your own information and having confidence in your own judgment and looking to what other people are doing for guidance. And I'm interested in how men and women make this trade-off differently. And if you can just leave aside for a moment any stereotypes that you might already have about who is reluctant to take directions and who has difficulty making up their minds. Because women do conform slightly more in my research, so far. But what I'm really interested in is the subtleties in that, you know, whether it's down to the specific setting that we test people in, or the kinds of decisions that we ask them to make, or whether it's a more general factor like confidence that can explain it, well, can explain it better. You know, rather than just looking at conformity as a behaviour that's driven in a mechanistic and deterministic fashion by being male or female per se. I know, right? So I'm not going to do very many jokes about the difference between men and women, because I think it's kind of been done, and just a little bit. If you ever find yourself at another comedy club and someone's talking about men and women, and there's a shadowy figure in the audience with arms folded, I think you'll find that the extant data on sex differences require a considerably more nuanced interpretation. That'll be me. Or someone I work with. Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit less about my sexy research and more about what comes afterwards, because I've been in St Andrews for about 9 months now, so we know what that means. Time for output. And it won't be long before I'm sending off a piece of my research all written up to be published. And when this happens, you know, there's got to be some sort of quality control process. You know, somebody has to check that I did things reasonably well, that I know what I'm doing. You know, I have to be able to say that I obtained my data ethically and I've reported them accurately. Because can you imagine a world in which people just published stuff without checking that kind of thing? Doesn't bear thinking about. So when I send off any piece of research, it's going to be sent out for peer review. And for anyone who's not experienced peer review, what this means is that it goes to 2 or 3 experts in the field who read it very thoroughly and give an unbiased commentary on the strengths and weaknesses of the paper. Now, depending on your recent experiences and your own bitterness level, that might have been the best joke of the set just then. So people get very emotional about the peer review process, and I've worked out why. It's because peer review is basically like dealing with your extended family. You're doing your own jokes in your head. So there are 3 ways it can go when I send off a piece of research. The first thing that can happen is the reviewers will say, "Oh, well done! That's absolutely super!" Peer reviewers are all posh, by the way. And they take it and they stick it straight up on the fridge for everyone to see. Remember that warm glow of unconditional acceptance? Forget it. Quite rare. Even if this does happen, you shouldn't expect it to make you popular with your siblings. Especially if they've just been on the end of an outright rejection, which is more along the lines of, "This nonsense again? I really would have thought you'd grown out of this by now. We're very disappointed in you. Go and think about what you've done." Meanwhile, you're cast in the role of the angry teenager going, "Why don't you understand? Nothing's ever good enough for you. Can't you be happy with the direction I've taken in my life? Just because I'm not like golden child over there. Oh, I fluttered my eyelashes. Nature paper." Don't underestimate the level of rivalry. But these 2 things are more extreme outcomes, and what's much more likely is that you get a revise and resubmit, which means, "That's all right, make a few changes, and then we'll get back to you." And this, you know you should be pleased to see it. There's the extended family again. But it can be a little bit wearing at times, because this is the feeling that you get when you're at a family gathering, you're in a bit of a hurry to leave, but suddenly everyone is between you and the door, they're all talking at once, and you can't please all of them. Auntie Maggie wants to introduce some broader family context by talking about second cousin Emily's new baby and how beautiful it is. The relevance to you is unclear. You didn't even know you had a second cousin, Emily. As far as you're concerned, it's just one more person who's married and mortgaged with a dog and a sprog before you have even committed yourself to so much as a pot plant. But family's family, and you've got to talk about them. So you managed to escape just as far as Uncle Bob. He wants you to justify your methods a little bit. So some patient explaining is necessary, that you took the A68 because that's the way the sat-nav told you to go. And you know now that there are roadworks, but you can't take a different route now. You're here. So all you can do is promise to do better on the route back. At least Grandad was fairly easy to keep happy. He's had a very long wait, but he's got his cataract operation coming up next week. So all you're going to hear from him is about how much he wants to be sighted again. So, peer review is your extended family. It's been around for a very long time. It's not perfect. Some people want to get rid of it. I personally would rather be with it than without it. I think it's forced me to consider things from a different perspective. It's trained me in defending my research while being critical about it at the same time. And I think it's made me a better scientist, if a slightly more bewildered and enraged human being. So if I can just bring it back to the sex for a moment. I'd like to leave you with a little statistic, because they're always fun. Whenever I ask myself whether my PhD was worth 4.5 years of my life, I remind myself that my thesis contains the word sex 1,421 times. It contains the word orgasm once.